Hey, what's going on, everybody? I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the new full frame line of Sony cameras, the differences between themselves, and why you would buy one over the other and help choose which one is right for you. I recently made the switch from Canon to Sony cameras, and doing my research, there was a lot of questions I had that weren't really answered online. So I wanted to take a few minutes out to address the main points of these cameras and how the switches from Canon to Sony, the reason I did it myself, and to help everybody figure out which camera would be best for them. Now, the main reasons I went from Canon to Sony were I obviously wanted an updated camera since the 6D and the 5D have been out for a few years now and they weren't really updated lately. I've heard a lot of good things about these Sony cameras. They've had a lot of features that I've been waiting for. I like to travel a lot too, so I like to keep my system as compact as possible. So switching over to these smaller mirrorless cameras definitely helps out lighten the load when you're traveling around. I've had a chance with all three of these cameras, and I just wanted to talk about if you were getting into Sony for the first time yourself or moving up to a full frame camera, which one you would choose for your own needs. So this here is the A7II. This is the entry-level full frame mirrorless camera from Sony, and right now it's the most affordable. You can get it new for about $1,700–1,800, and right now I bought this used like new condition for only $1,500. So it's kind of a no-brainer coming from a Canon system where this is comparable more towards probably better than a 6D, but not quite as good as a 5D. But from my experiences, I would compare this more to the 5D. This is what I would recommend as the best all-arounder if you're getting into full frame mirrorless cameras. This shoots excellent 1080p footage, shoots slow-mo 60 frames per second, which is great because I can't get that on the Canon cameras. For photos, I was amazed at how good the autofocus was. Even since I was using adapters with Canon EF lenses, I was a little skeptical on how well it would work, but I was overall impressed. It was way better than shooting photos on my 6D, way better at autofocusing, way more options to choose from, a lot of focus points, face detection also, which is great. And as far as an all-arounder, this is definitely a good option to go for right now. The second camera here I'm going to talk about is actually the first Sony camera that I purchased. This is the A7S Mark II, and this is more geared towards video, obviously. The A7S right now goes for about $3,000 new. It's still pretty new at the time of this recording, so it's hard to find them used right now. It shoots internal 4K video as well as slow motion 120 frames per second at 1080p. Obviously, its biggest strength is the low light capabilities. No camera on the market right now could compare to the low light capabilities of this camera right here. As far as photo though, it wasn't that good. It didn't have any phase detection, only contrast detection, which did affect the Canon EF lenses with the adapters, which I'll get into in a second. The lack of phase detection really affects the autofocus with the EF lenses. The contrast just isn't good enough. I don't know with the adapters or whatever it is, but it takes forever to catch focus with this thing. And I definitely don't recommend it for photos. It's only 12 megapixels, which isn't horrible, but I mean, nowadays you want something better than that. So this is an excellent camera for video, but I wouldn't really recommend it for photos. Now, the third camera in Sony's full frame lineup is the A7R Mark II, and this thing is by far the best all-arounder camera. It has amazing video features, just like the A7S, and has the great autofocus of the A7II, which makes it ideal for photos as well. The autofocus is insane on this camera. The resolution is out of this world on this camera as well, with such a high megapixel rate that images are way sharper than anything I was getting on my 6D before that. And it also has the 4K video capabilities like the A7S does. Now, it's not as good in low light as the A7S, but it's still very, very good. If you're a photo enthusiast and like to take your photography as well as your video seriously, this is definitely the option I would go for. Now, all three cameras have the same body type. The button layout is pretty much identical in all three of these. They all have this flip screen, which is nice, comes in handy, and they all have the 5-axis built-in stabilization, which is huge for any prime lens user who doesn't have stabilization built in their lens already. Now, coming from Canon to Sony, I did have to work with adapters to put the Canon EF lenses on these cameras. The first one I bought was, of course, the Metabones. This is the ideal adapter for these cameras. It's the most expensive though, at $400, so owning more than one could be pricey. I've read about this Comlight adapter, and the build quality is pretty similar to the Metabones. The autofocus is nowhere near as good though as the Metabones. So this is great for the A7S where you're doing mostly video and you won't need to autofocus as much. But as far as the A7R or the A7II, the Comlight, the cheap adapters, I wouldn't really recommend them. I would definitely go with the Metabones instead. If you're just getting into Sony full frame cameras or you're looking to upgrade to a full frame camera, I definitely recommend the A7 Mark II. Like I said, it's a great all-arounder for photos and video. You can't go wrong with this camera. Now, if you're someone who's been on the full frame system for a while or just looking to upgrade, I definitely recommend the A7R Mark II. This thing is a beast at video and photo, and the specs of this camera will hold in the market for the next few years easily. Now, if you're someone who's more serious about video, I would say definitely go with the A7S Mark II. Like I mentioned before, it's not the best for photo. This thing is a monster of video, just like the A7R Mark II. The lack of phase detection, autofocus points, and megapixels is not really ideal for photography this day and age. I also wrote up a detailed article when I first got my A7S Mark II on my website. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Anybody who made the switch from Canon to Sony like I did or plans on making the switch, let me know which features you like the best in these cameras. Leave it in the comments below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, just let me know in the comments below. Until then, see you guys later.